When is the Renters' Rights Bill likely to come into force? Well, I'm recording this on the 20th of March, and the Renters' Rights Bill is currently in the House of Lords. But when's it actually going to come into effect? In this video, I explain what's left to do before the bill becomes an act and gets royal assent, and then when I think the different parts will come into effect. And this is useful for landlords and property businesses to know because we're going to have a whole load of new obligations when these different parts come into effect. Who am I? I'm Suzanne Smith, lawyer turned landlord, and I run the independent.com website and this YouTube channel to bring free, reliable content to landlords, letting agents, and property businesses. And you can sign up for my free weekly newsletter on the independentlandlord.com/subscribe. Right. Well, there's been a lot of concern that the Renters' Rights Act and the new tenancy system will come into place before this coming summer. And I've always said that that's not going to happen because this is a really complicated and vast bit of legislation. Here it is here. It is absolutely vast and complicated. And it's not freestanding in itself, that it puts layer upon layer upon layer on top of other bits of legislation, like some kind of mutant layer cake with little offshoot satellites. And it's not the sort of legislation that can be pushed through Parliament quickly. And we've seen this because although there was the first reading in the House of Lords earlier this year and the second reading at the beginning of February, nothing's actually happened since then. People were originally expecting royal assent by Easter, but the bill has got bogged down in the House of Lords, and the committee stage has now been scheduled for after Easter on the 22nd of April, and that's the starting date. So we're now in the House of Lords, and there has been a lot about the talk about this upcoming committee stage, and a lot of it, I'm afraid, is wishful thinking, because during the committee stage, the Lords will discuss a lot of amendments. They'll go through the bill on a line-by-line basis, and a lot of pro-landlord amendments have been tabled, particularly by Conservative peers who incidentally didn't suggest these amendments when the Renters Reform Bill was going through Parliament, when the Conservatives were in power. And there's also been some pro-tenant amendments that have been proposed. But the ones to look out for are those from Baroness Taylor. The rest is noise, pretty much. And Baroness Taylor is the minister in charge of taking the bill through the House of Lords. But why is Baroness Taylor important? Well, Baroness Taylor's amendments will be the official government amendments, and they will make it onto the bill one way or another. And if the government is going to make concessions at all, for instance, for student landlords, we can live in hope, this is when it will happen. And I'll certainly be keeping a close eye on the amendment paper to see when Baroness Taylor's amendments are tabled. So keep subscribed to this channel and put on notifications if you want to find out quickly. So once the committee stage is finished, it will then go to the report stage and the third reading in the House of Lords, and they'll discuss the amendments as well. And this might happen in May or June. So the next really big important step is royal assent. So this leads me to think that royal assent will be late June at the earliest, or maybe even July. But remember that Parliament is going to be in recess, that means on holiday, from the 22nd of July. So that if they're going to get it done before the summer holidays, then it will need to be done by the 22nd of July. So what is royal assent? It's the final stage in the legislative process in the UK Parliament, where the Renters' Rights Bill will officially become the Renters' Rights Act. And this is when King Charles III will give his formal approval to it, and it will become law. But royal assent isn't the end of it, and most of the bill won't come into effect straight away on royal assent. So the next big step after royal assent is the regulation stage, where the government will publish what are called statutory instruments. And these are regulations that provide a lot of detail on the new regime. And there are over 20 places in the Renters' Rights Bill where it refers to needing regulations to set out the detail. For instance, what is the basic information we have to put in written statements, which are basically tenancy agreements, also regulations about the database, redress scheme, procedures for rent increases, etc. But the key ones are the ones that will set up the new tenancy regime. And so this will be updating the forms for Section 8, updating the Form 4 for rent increases under Section 13, and transitional arrangements so that existing assured short-hold tenancies become assured tenancies, and even the commencement date itself for Chapter 1 of Part 1 needs to be implemented through regulations. So this, what I call the commencement date, is just for the tenancy regime. But that's a really important thing. That's where the big changes are going to come into effect. So Chapter 1 of Part 1 is a key part of the bill, as that deals with the new tenancy regime. And everything in this chapter will come into effect for everyone on the same day, whether or not it's a new tenancy or an old tenancy, an existing tenancy. And in a nutshell, this is the date when existing short-hold tenancies will convert into periodic tenancies. All fixed terms contracts will end and become periodic. Rent periods can no longer be for more than a month, and any clauses that ask for rent to be paid for longer periods or for it to be paid in advance will be null and void. And landlords will only be able to increase rent by using Section 13 procedure, and any rent review clauses in contracts will be null and void on the commencement date. And no new Section 21 notices will be able to be served on the commencement date, on or after the commencement date. And there'll be a really short period of only 3 months during which landlords can start proceedings for an order for possession for Section 21 notices that have already been issued before the commencement date. And the commencement date is also the day when landlords can start using the new Section 8 grounds, for instance, Ground 1A, when a landlord wants to sell up. So this is all that I've been describing as the new tenancy regime. There's quite a lot to it. And so when will this come into force? When's the commencement date going to happen? Well, the commencement date can't be until regulations have been published, and that will happen after royal assent. It might happen quite quickly after royal assent, we don't know. But the minimum period after royal assent is likely to be 2 months. But if the government were to take a sensible approach, they would give us at least 6 to 12 months to get ready for it, because there are so many changes, and the list I went through just then is just some of the changes. So we'll need to see whether the government does take a sensible approach. And they've assured us that they will give us time to get ready.
And we will provide sufficient notice ahead of implementation.
But no specifics. I've been saying all along that the earliest the commencement date will be is the beginning of October 2025. But that was on the basis that the bill would be pretty much done and dusted by Easter, whereas it's still got quite a long way to go in the House of Lords. So I'm now thinking it's going to be later, and maybe even into 2026. We don't know. And again, that might be wishful thinking. But that's just one bit of the bill. And so what I'm saying is, for the main tenancy part of the bill, that will be sometime, I think, from October. But if they're sensible, the beginning of 2026. So for other parts of the bills, they're completely independent from the commencement date. So for instance, the landlord database and the ombudsman, the start date for these aren't linked to the commencement date. And if I were to guess, I would think that they'll come into effect sometime in 2026 at the earliest. And the database might start at a fairly basic level that will become more comprehensive in time. Nothing's come out about it yet. We don't know the details of either of them. And as I'm recording this towards the end of March, we've had no detail on this. So, and these things, even government IT projects, they take a while to sort out. And we've not had the official announcement over who's going to be the new ombudsman, whether it's going to be the housing ombudsman or someone else. Another important part is the Decent Home Standard. This is also separate, and there's likely to be a transition time after they publish exactly what it's meant to be for private landlords. Because the Decent Home Standard in place at the moment is for social housing, and the government has said that they will adapt it for the private rented sector. It won't be the same. And that's the same with Awaab's law. It was originally introduced for social housing, and it hasn't even come into effect for social housing yet. So, as the government has said that they'll adapt the requirements for the private rented sector, and I'm guessing that this means it won't be until 2027 until they come into effect at the earliest. If you'd like to understand this all better, check out my free training course on YouTube, The Renters' Rights Bill Explained. And I'm releasing regular updates on what you need to know on the Renters' Rights Bill in this playlist here, Renters' Rights Update. And a really easy way for you to keep up to date is to sign up for my free weekly newsletter here. And if you found this useful, please give the video a thumbs up and see you soon.